Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. And if you're watching on our YouTube channel, Tar Heel Illustrated, I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner. And joining me tonight, as he so often does, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And Andrew, I got to ask you, man, I've already heard the story, but I want you to tell it to the people, obviously, because I'm sure there's some people looking at you right now wondering why you're not in John Paul Jones Arena in Charlottesville right now with a beautiful, UVA backdrop behind you, man. What happened today?
Yeah, it is. It's an awesome. I love that arena.
It is a great arena. It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, I tried to get there, and I got stuck in between South Hill and Petersburg. Everything was fine. I'm cruising along, and all of a sudden, standstill traffic, and there's just trees snapped all over the place. The ice was unbelievable. Before the standstill traffic, I knew something was up, obviously, because you could see the trees are kind of white, and it's not snow, it's ice. I'd rather it be snow than ice.
Yeah.
And every eighth of a mile, you see sawdust in the middle of the interstate all over the place. Well, clearly a tree had fallen. Someone came along, sawed that thing up, got it off so the traffic could move forward.
Jeez. And
it got to the point where I had a second standstill, and at this point, it's like 3 hours before the game. I went 4 miles in 2.5 hours, and I realized the only way I was going to see the game was to turn around and come home. And the only way I could turn around, because the one ramp we could get off was blocked because of a tree had fallen, I had to go up the on-ramp. And there was nobody coming. I flew pretty fast, and Johnny Law didn't see me, and I got on 85 South, dodged a few trees, and got home. Covered the game from TV. It's 2 in a row now because there was no media allowed at Duke. So I told everybody 2021 was going to be weirder than 2020. And I think we're off to a pretty good start in achieving that, if it is considered an achievement. And unfortunately, shout out to Greg Barnes of Tar Heel, or Inside Carolina. He got stuck, couldn't make it, and he was there the whole game. I texted him a few minutes ago. He just hit the North Carolina line an hour and a half after the game ended. So hope he gets home safely. The team bust. So I did talk to Steve Kirshner. I let him know what I was doing, let him know how bad it was. The team bust up there, and their plans are to bust back tonight, I guess. So tough stuff, man. But I'm glad I'm here. Got to see the game, and it was a game that I'd seen before a few times, Jacob. Seems like if you just kind of squint, saw it in 17, saw it in 18, saw it last year, and it happened again today.
You're not lying about that, man. Yeah, it was a perfect segue into the game. But yeah, like you said, glad everybody's getting home safe, and hopefully Carolina's able to get back safe and everything. And you don't want to be in that part of Virginia today, not this weekend at all, man. It's a tough place to be. But yeah, let's dive into it, AJ, like we always do, man. Carolina obviously losing at Virginia tonight in Charlottesville, 60-48. Heels failing to break the 50-point mark once again in Charlottesville. AJ, the first thing I kind of want to talk about, struggles in the paint. I think that was number one for Carolina. UNC 10 for 25 on their layups. UVA's bigs were 9 for 14 from three-point land. You kind of said it off camera when we were running through some of these stats. I think you said it a few times. That's the game right there. You can dissect any other thing you want, look at any other stats you want. But when you look at that, just how inefficient Carolina was around the rim, and as a contrast, how good UVA's bigs were from beyond the three-point land. You look at those two things, and it just kind of sums it up tonight, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, when you play UVA, when you prepare to play this team, you know that their best perimeter shooters are their 3, their 4, and their 5 men. And it's very challenging. Your bigs have got to get out and defend. I asked Roy on Friday, I think it was, about the uniqueness of Jay Huff and the challenge that he presents, because he's a big that's comfortable on the wing. He doesn't – sometimes bigs get outside and they kind of mess up spacing. They're not real comfortable playing off one another out there. He's just really comfortable, and so is Hauser. And of course, Murphy's a guy that's out there a lot more. He's their 3-man, and he's got good size, but he's more comfortable playing out there as it is. And they were 9 for 14. So Carolina, that's really one of their primary strengths, maybe their primary strength. Carolina's primary strength are its bigs. Get the ball down low, sail your man, turn and score. We've talked about it 1,000 times. So when one team's bigs, when their bread and butter is essentially the 3-point shot and they're 9 for 14, and the other team's bread and butter is getting the ball inside, turning and scoring and drawing fouls, and they're 10 for 25 and they don't draw a lot of fouls, well, there you go. That's the game. There are a lot of other things that happened, of course, that were problematic for North Carolina, but that's it right there. I asked Roy after the game, the one good thing if you're going to miss a game these days, Jacob, is we've got Zoom, so we're able to do interviews. We're able to write stories. It's a different world, man. And I asked Roy after the game about the 10 for 25, how much of it was UVA, how much of it was Carolina, how frustrating it was. And he said it was extremely frustrating. Lots of missed bunnies around the basket, easy. A lot of the shots were not all that contested. But I think the way UVA defends just kind of rushed Carolina. Like every time they got an open shot, they kind of rushed it a little bit. And they got some open shots tonight. And then, of course, the UVA did affect stuff. If Jay Huff is near it, he's going to affect it. He had 4 blocks tonight, and he probably altered 5 or 6 other shots. So, and that kind of sums it up, really. Garrison didn't get – he had that one – we thought we would see some high-low. We didn't really see much high-low. And if you can hit a couple shots inside the free throw line, it can help you with that. Because UVA just defends things so well. Garrison, I think, had 1 jumper inside the free throw line fairly early, and he missed it, and he just was out of sorts. Daron looked like he was trying to do things too quickly and therefore was not very efficient. He kind of looked a little reckless at times. And Armando, when Armando kind of goes into one of those stretches where he's not playing well, it's very obvious he's not playing well. And he had that tonight. So it was a real rough night for the Heels inside offensively and for those guys defensively because they didn't keep the bigs from getting those shots like they were supposed to.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like I said, I think those two kind of stats especially kind of sum up the game. And also we kind of talked about it a little bit off camera too, but just the way Carolina started was really bad. What was it, 21-4 at one point? And I think everybody, I know I tweeted, I was like, this game's over already. I mean, trying to come back from a 17-point deficit against a UVA team is like trying to come back from, 25, 30-point deficit against another team. So it's, just to add, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but Carolina,
you're good.
Carolina had 3 field goals in their first 18 possessions.
Yeah.
So, they took their shovels out on the court with them. They just started digging. And they all jumped in the hole and said, okay, let's see if we can climb out of this thing. And they couldn't. But, they got it to 7, I think, at one point. And actually, they had an 11-1 run. They got 22-15. In the second half, they had it under 10 a few times, but they can never get that stop and then convert on the other end a couple of times. In order to get a run, it's not just offense. The defense is part of the run, too. And they never could string that stuff together. And they actually scored 20 of their 48 points in the last 12 minutes when the game kind of changed. It just felt like they were out of it for a while. And Walker Kessler gave them some pretty good minutes in that stretch, too, which we'll talk about here in a second. So you're three buckets in your first 18 possessions. You're down 21-4. You're 10 for 25 on layups. And their bigs are 9 for 14 from 3. I don't care what else happens in the game. You're not going to win.
Yeah, and just to stay on that for a second, too, it wasn't like Carolina didn't have opportunities. Carolina had more possessions than UVA did. It was like 59-55 in terms of possessions. And, Carolina ended up shooting about 35% on the game, and UVA was just a little bit shy of that 40-point mark. So there wasn't, Carolina had more possessions. They had opportunities to score. Wasn't too much of a difference in shooting percentage, but when you just consider how big of a hole you dig yourself in those first 4 minutes, first few minutes, it's tough to come back from that.
And I was telling you before we started this that I just got the impression that let's say 3 of those layups go in. Carolina's 2 for 16 from 3. Let's say 2 more threes go in. Next thing you're talking about 12-point difference. Let's say they're in the 58 to 60-point range. Yeah. But UVA would have scored 65 or 60. So I just think that UVA was going to do whatever it had to do to win this game. It's a better basketball team. It has been a better basketball team for a few years, and it's a matchup nightmare for the Tar Heels. The numbers literally bear it out.
Yeah, it's unbelievable, how Carolina struggled up there. 7 in a row against UVA. They've lost now. Haven't won in Charlottesville since 2012. 3-8 in their last 11 matchups. You can just keep running through stats all day. But, AJ, just to focus on a couple positives real quick, though. I thought Walker Kessler, particularly in the second half, had a really good outing. All his points came in the second half. 9 points overall, but did some really nice things there. You also talked about, this is something you pointed out, so I'm going to give you credit on this one, but RJ Davis, and I agree with it as well. I thought he did a decent job running the team. Carolina as a whole only had 8 turnovers. So, that's that's a way to be successful against Virginia, is taking care of that ball.
They got a lot of shots they like.
I know. They just didn't hit them.
They didn't knock them down. And, I guess RJ doing a decent job of running the team. Decent on this night's pretty good. Decent stands out. And, Kessler, I think we should probably focus on the most because it was good to see a kid get an opportunity this late in the season when he hasn't had more than just a couple of minutes here and there in the first half minutes. Dean had a thing where he'd play a lot of guys in the first half just in case he needed them in the second half. They'd already been in the game. Roy kind of carries that same thing too. And Walker had a couple of appearances in the first half because it was very clear early on Garrison wasn't playing well. Armando was in one of those Armando things. Dayron was struggling with what UVA was doing a little bit. So and Kessler did okay. You put him in again, he did a little bit more than okay. And in the second half, I thought he played pretty well. He finished with 9 points, like you said. He was 3 for 5 from the floor, 3 for 4 from free throw, and he got to the line. He had 5 rebounds, a couple of offensive rebounds. He had a putback. In fact, Carolina only had 4 second chance points on 6 offensive rebounds in the first half. They finished with 13 second chance points on 12 offensive rebounds, and Kessler was a part of that. Roy pointed out some of the things he did wrong, but the great thing about that is he's got some of that stuff on film now that maybe didn't stand out on film before. Some of the mistakes he made tonight were bigger mistakes because he was being counted on more. So that stuff will really pop in the film room, and he'll learn from it. But, anytime a guy that hadn't done much suddenly steps forwards and does something, that's a positive for a team that's still clearly searching. We talked about how they just might wobble around the rest of the year, look really good one night, look really bad the next night. That might be the case. So if you have another dude that Roy could have a little bit of faith in to at least give a shot, that helps because maybe the next game Kessler does enough or somebody else does enough, like tonight RJ playing 24 minutes, to actually help them get a victory when a lot of the regulars are not the starters are not playing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I said,
and 8 turnovers is a positive against UVA.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think if you had to, you always got to kind of pull some positives out of these performances, and I think there were some, like we just mentioned, with those 3 things in particular. And last thing I want to touch on, AJ, real quick. It's 4th straight time Carolina hasn't breaking the 50-point mark at UVA. I mean, it's just a program they've struggled with. I said it a few minutes ago, kind of running through some of the historical stats, and Carolina's just struggles in Charlottesville. I'm going to go ahead and run through the stat lines of the guys real quick so you can kind of see. Walker Kessler, 9 points. Kerwin Walton had 8. Mondo Bacot had 7 points, 10 boards. Dayron Sharp and RJ Davis had 6 points a pop, and Garrison Brooks finished with 5. And Steve Kirshner actually sent us this note afterwards, but this is the last time no Tar Heels scored in double figures was in 1966 in the 21-20 loss at Duke in the ACC tournament in Raleigh. It was a long, long time ago, AJ. So, yeah, man. Yeah, 21-20. I was like, is that a football score? But it's just Carolina's – the struggles just continue in Charlottesville. I think I can just leave it at that, right?
Well, in these last 4, the average score is 57.5 for UVA to 46.8 for Carolina. Carolina's shooting 33.9% from the floor. They have shot in those 4 games. 21.7% from 3. I racked all the numbers and put them in my 5 tape.
Sounds like a Carolina football score, man, when you think about it. And Carolina's scoring like 50 points of football a game nowadays.
Very much. I mean, Sam Howell's team had 41. They lost. They had 41 up there, so they weren't
scored as much as Carolina did, yeah.
And they've had 46 second chance points up there in the 4 games, which is not a lot for Carolina. They would usually it's about 12 or so a game. They would usually be a little bit higher than that. But you juxtapose that to the turnovers, 53 turnovers leading to 66 Virginia points in those 4 games. So 46 second chance points, 66 points off turnovers for UVA, and the margin of victory in those games has only been about 10, 11 points on average, which is not a lot. But when you look at those numbers, you start to see, okay, there are things they could have done differently. They could have trimmed some of those margins and maybe found ways to win, but they don't find ways to win there. No. They've lost 7 in a row. The national championship team in 2017 scored 43 points there, and 5 weeks later cut down the nets.
Yeah, no.
So it goes back to what we said at the beginning. This is just a really tough matchup for UNC. They struggle with that pack line defense, but I think that there's more to it than that. I mean, UVA is good. A lot of people still want to dog UVA and say, oh, they're the most boring team to watch. And I don't think so. I think when that offense is clicking the right way, it's a beautiful thing to watch. It just doesn't always do it. It just doesn't always do it as fast as people want to see. But it works. They're still the defending national champions. And you could make a really clear argument that in recent years, Virginia is, without a doubt, I think, the best program in the ACC right now.
Oh, yeah.
The numbers bear that out. They have Carolina's number for sure.
Yeah.
So, the Tar Heels may go back up there next year, and they'll certainly go back up there in the next 2 years. And a big topic of conversation in that game is going to be, can they score 50 points? It's an amazing stat for a program that probably hasn't hit the 50-point mark, but maybe like 10 times in the last 20 years.
Oh, no.
And it's happened 4 times up there. So, I mean, I I can count a few off the top of my head right now, and I'd probably have to do a little bit of research. But I've seen 3 of them. I didn't see this one. In fact, this is the first time I've missed a Carolina at Virginia game since I got into this profession. So,
yeah, that's wild. You told me that beforehand. That's hard to believe in some ways.
Yeah, well, the first few I drove down from Alexandria to the game, so and I was working, for other people and stuff. So I love going up there. I love
beautiful
JPJ.
campus.
I couldn't stand the old arena; it was brutal.
Yeah, I've heard stories about that one.
It was awful. The press rows stunk. It's terrible. But I like JPJ a lot. It's a great facility. But I've seen some really good games up there, and not including Carolina UVA. I've been there for a lot of other games, but Carolina goes up there, they just wince. They go in there, Roy's got to think, just get these 2 hours over with.
Yeah, it's like they're almost before they get off the bus. It's you're already defeated. You know what I mean? It's just you can't have a lot of belief if no matter what team you are. If you just look at how much Carolina struggled against them.
Their performance was a lot like my attempt to try to get to Charlottesville.
Just didn't quite pan out like you'd want it to. Exactly.
Nah.
Hey, man, I'm glad you made it back safe in time and actually were able to watch the game. But yeah, tough night for Carolina and Charlottesville, falling to Virginia 60-48. That's going to do it for us, guys. As always, if you've enjoyed the video, be sure to like it. Be sure to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to share it with your friends, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.